Meehan. Prior to his election 2 years ago, he served 7 years as U.S. Attorney for Pennsylvania's Eastern District. He is on the Homeland Security Oversight and Governmental Reform and Transportation Infrastructure Committees in the House. His Democratic opponent, George Beatty, is invited to appear on a separate broadcast. But, Congressman, good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, Chris. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Absolutely. The big political event of the year so far has been the Supreme Court's decision on the Obama health care law. They decided that it did, in fact, pass constitutional muster. In your view, was that a sound decision?
Well, the decision was one in which they suggested that the constitutionality was very narrow, that effectively it was because it was able to be deemed a tax. So what we've seen is the articulation that it's only constitutional because taxes are being raised to pay for it.
Do you agree with that assessment that it is, in fact, a tax?
Well, it was argued that it was a tax by the very department that suggested that it wasn't in the first place. But the president's own lawyers went to court and argued that it was able to be upheld under the taxing authority. So the court found that very narrow basis and stood up the constitutionality of it, but it still really doesn't go to the essence of the question about whether it's still, very, very sound. I mean, I'm concerned about it, and I'm concerned principally because the one thing it really has not done is deal with the issue of the dramatic costs associated with the delivery of our health care and our health care system, and nothing in that opinion related to the wisdom. In fact, the opinion was pretty clear in saying there's political choices that have been made, and we're not getting into the middle of those. This bill has already doubled since it was introduced in terms of the cost. And the reality is that we're expanding care to 30 million more people under that bill, but cutting $500 billion out of Medicare. The math doesn't add up. And my real concern is, well, we talk about accessibility, and it will significantly increase the accessibility, but it's going to be the availability of health care in my mind, and I'm dramatically concerned about what it's going to mean and with respect to the relationship between doctors and their patients, and frankly the numbers of doctors there to provide health care.
You have already voted once to repeal this legislation in a new Congress. If it is still a GOP-controlled House, if the GOP takes control of the Senate, and if Mitt Romney is in the White House, would you vote to repeal this legislation again, knowing that a repeal might be possible?
Yes, I voted to repeal it in the past, and I will again. Because I do believe that, for many of the reasons I articulated and many others, it is not the best approach to us being able to provide quality health care here in the United States. We've done nothing to deal with the issue of the cost. In fact, it's going to dramatically escalate, and that's going to have an impact on jobs. It's going to have an impact on employers. It's going to have an impact on the middle class. One of the points that's being made is that somehow this is designed to avoid the impact. Close to 75% of the people that are going to pay this penalty, this tax, are going to be people making less than $120,000, and so it's going to have a real impact right on down to many of the people who are currently in the system.
Repealing the legislation, though, won't do anything about the problem. One of the big problems we have in this country, which is the fact that there are millions of Americans who are uninsured and who are putting a burden on the healthcare system. What kind of ideas would you then support to try to solve that problem?
One of the concerns is the number here is there's still going to be 17 million who have been estimated to not going to be covered by this, even if everything moves forward. So we haven't really completely dealt with that issue. Look, there's been a number of proposals on ways to be able to address the costs. Among them, the ability for insurance to be able to be purchased across state lines, to take into consideration some of the things that we have done to allow important provisions like care to age 26, the ability for people to be able to not be denied by pre-existing conditions, but find other ways to control the cost. Look, as a former prosecutor, one of the things that I'm interested in doing is there's an estimate that $50 billion is lost to fraud and abuse. And one of the things we would be able to do would be to create a system in which we have checks against the payment before we pay. Right now we pay and chase. We pay providers, and then if there's something wrong, we go back and try to get it back. Let's do verification on the front end so we don't pay money that isn't obligated. That's just one example of ways that we could save significant amounts and put those savings back into access and quality care.
You've had certainly an eventful 2 years in Congress so far. Perhaps these last 2 years haven't been as productive, though, as the nation would like. I know that a lot of legislation has been moved out of the House, and it's gone to the Senate where it's died. It's a Democratic-controlled body. But why do you think, Congressman, there haven't been more opportunities to have legislation come out of the House, to pass through the Senate, and be signed by the President? You know, things, bipartisan ideas that could move this country forward.
Well, I have actually worked on one of the principal bipartisan pieces, which is both sides getting together and agreeing to look at the real challenging issues that face it. And I stood up as one of 38 people who took the courageous vote to look at the Simpson-Bowles model and include that as part of our budget determinations. That was a bipartisan issue. We had some Democrats from our region I supported, as did Charlie Dent from Allentown. We worked on a series of issues in a cooperative fashion, on a bipartisan way, the most recent being the highway bill, which was just passed, that we got to yes. It's going to have a huge impact. It dealt with the issue of the student loans. Again, there have been some successes, but these are big issues that are out there, and unless and until we can deal with the big challenges, I'm as frustrated as other people are about the inability to get things done.
You did play a part in the bipartisan collaborative effort to keep the Sunoco refinery in Philadelphia open. What was the key to that effort and to making that successful?
Allowing people to see the opportunity that exists down there and working, as we said, in a bipartisan fashion, putting all the politics aside and having everybody on the same page to say, what's it going to take to get this done, to invite private investment, to invite those who can see opportunity to have the ability to do it, to deal with the issue of overregulation. We want to see responsible development of this opportunity, but to let people know that we will work with them to see this tremendous asset not just developed, but it has the potential to create new jobs as well. And that's where I have found a part of the ability to make this job meaningful to our region. If you add to it the work that we have done in collaborative fashion, the same group together, I worked very closely with Bob Brady and others on the deepening of the port. This is going to mean thousands of jobs for our region. After 20 years, this thing has passed. We finally were able to get it through the Congress, and it was the ability to work in a bipartisan fashion with my colleagues on the other side just to get it done.
I want to ask you about the Club for Growth, which is a conservative organization. They came out recently with a scorecard for first-term Republican lawmakers like yourself. Interesting, they gave you the second lowest rating among conservatives, which is to say that they found your record to be more politically moderate than conservative. Do you take issue with that? Are you comfortable with that assessment of your first term?
You know,